Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Noelle and today we are doing story time. I don't really have much to say about training or reviews about anything. I just released my review of the Under Armour Flow Velocity Wind, so you can check that out. It was last week's vlog. But today's vlog was precipitated by a tweet from a friend of mine who recently started cycling in the city. There's not a lot of respect given to two-wheeled vehicles because mostly motorists expect that you will yield to them, to their four-wheeled vehicles. Ever since community quarantine, there have been a lot more people taking to the roads on two wheels, and there's been a movement establishing space for cyclists on the road. And so you see miles and miles of bike paths and protected bike paths being rolled out across Metro Manila. Other beautiful cities in the Philippines also have these facilities, like, say, Iloilo. But it's still kind of like the exception rather than the rule. And so for me, because I have very, very limited commuter cycling experience and I don't think I have a handle on the handling needed to deal with motorists and road traffic, I simply choose not to cycle on the roads. But yeah, there are so many other people who are really getting introduced to the world of cycling. I know it's a pleasure, especially on Saturdays and Sundays when there's considerably less motorized traffic on the roads and people can actually go and cycle places. That's when a lot of these leisure cycling trips are taken, and that's great. I really wish we could see more of it, and I kind of hope for the day when I, as a not very confident cyclist, can get out on the road and not be afraid for my life. But that being said, yeah, I saw this tweet from a friend of mine and she said that what was supposed to be like a starter ride for her turned into a 20-kilometer, what we call a Budol ride, which is kind of like you tell a person who's only new to cycling, you tell them, oh, it's going to be an easy ride, it's going to be a very slow pace, we'll just ride short, and it's not going to be hilly. And then you go and take them on a path or a road that kind of really challenges them and puts them through their paces. And either they deal with it and they can keep up with you, or they are horrified and they will never cycle again. But that usually doesn't happen because these people who are starting cycling have already put considerable investment in buying a bike, buying the gear that they need to start cycling, and so they just deal with it and they think that it's a matter of course that the first rides are always going to be bumpy ones. But I do think that that's kind of problematic, and it does tend to gatekeep cycling in a sense because you don't give them a gentle introduction. It's kind of like if you were going to start swimming and the instructor just threw you in the pool and told you to swim one length and you don't even know your strokes, you don't even know how to breathe. At least it's a pool, right? So there's not really anywhere that you can go aside from the threat of drowning. The environment's quite controlled. But if you throw a person to the mercies of the road and they have no idea what they're doing yet, don't you think that's kind of dangerous anyway? Like doing these Budol rides with inexperienced cyclists. For some people, they might treat it as a joke, but for me, I think that if you're going to guide a person into experiencing cycling, you want to set them up for success and you don't want to scare them and you don't want to make it feel like it's an insurmountable challenge. Which leads me to the story that I'm going to tell. It's actually two stories about some rides that I've taken with some people who invited me to join them when I was just starting out as a triathlete and just starting out long distance cycling. These people will remain unnamed. I'm still friends with, I don't have any ill feelings towards them, but you just have to be careful about the rides that you go on and the people that you ride with, because you don't want to be put in the situations that I was put in. First story, I was only a few months into triathlon. I had just finished my first race, and I had just bought my first bike, a road bike. And so some friends of mine said, "Oh, you can join us on our weekend rides. It's not very long. We go at an easy pace. So let's meet up at the Shell on Marcos Highway." Right? Okay. I brought my tire kit. I brought my water. I brought my nutrition. I meet up with them and I say, "Okay, so guys, tell me about this route that we're taking." "Oh, so we're just going to go up Antipolo and then down Teresa, and then we're going to go straight on towards maybe Halahala or Bugarin." It depends where the road takes us. I say, "Okay, do you think I can handle riding with you guys?" And it was a bunch of boys, which was my first mistake because I didn't make sure that there was anyone in the group that would be at my level. And they said, "Yeah, you can handle it." And oh my gosh, if you guys knew how steep the climb and descent in Antipolo is, basically it's a winding road, and it winds because it has to get up high. And then after it gets up high, it comes down, and there's a hairpin turn and a cliff. So I made it up the climb and I made it down the turn. And then we stopped at the DPWH in Morong Rizal. That's where we all met up. And I just had my heart in my throat the entire time. Oh, I forgot that because we started a little later than usual, we had to ride through a town and its market traffic. So jeepneys stopping and letting people off. And think of it like this: I had not ridden on open roads at all. And so I don't know how I survived. I don't know how I had the finesse to feather my brakes, to thank God I wasn't using cleats back then, because if I had been using cleats, I probably would have fallen on my side after one too many hard stops. In any case, when we stopped at Morong, one of the guys looked at me and he said, "Okay, are you tired? We can just take this jeepney. We can hire this jeepney and we can put our bikes in the back and we'll just drive back to where we started." Thank God. So I made it safely home, and I promised I would never again ride from that Shell on Marcos Highway, because I did not want to face that hairpin downhill again. Second story. So this was shortly before my first 70.3. The bunch of guys that I was training with, notice again that I was training with guys. They said, "Noel, you know what? I think you're a pretty good cyclist. Do you want to come and climb Bugarin with us? Or maybe Halahala, and then maybe we can go down to Pagsanhan and all that." And I said, "Sure. Yeah. You guys aren't riding hard, right?" And they said, "No." So this time we parked at the DPWH in Morong. That's where we started our bike ride. And I got outpaced by these guys. I'm sure that they meant well, but it wasn't a keep together ride. It wasn't a bunch ride. No, they had power targets that they needed to hit, and pace targets that they needed to hit, and time targets that they needed to hit. And so yours truly was left to fend for herself. I climbed up Bugarin, came down Mabitak. There was, I think, I think we stopped at Pisong Cafe, or they waited for me at Pisong Cafe. And then some of them wanted to go on to Pagsanhan. One of them said, "Do you want to go back already?" I said, "Yeah, I have to be somewhere." So we started riding back. And I got left behind again. And the really traumatic part about this is, so you have to make descents, right? And I got stuck behind a truck that was making the descents very gingerly. So these are really windy descents, and I was just constantly feathering my brakes because I didn't want to smack into the back of a truck. I still get emotional and het up about it when I think about that. Thank God nothing bad happened to me. So I finally get on the flats again. I'm heading back to the DPWH. I've been left behind by the guy who's supposed to be accompanying me. So I'm riding, and I notice some breathing behind me. And it's this teenage kid. He's on a road bike too, and I can tell that he's probably from the local bike club here, and he was like drafting behind me. And so I wave him on to take the lead because I was a little bit tired and I wanted a breather. So we did that for a while. And then, as we got to a wide part of the road, he rode up beside me and he said, "Ate, saan ka galing? Ate, where have you come from?" And I said, "Oh, I come from Manila. I parked in DPWH. I rode to Bugarin and Mabitak and back." And then he asked me again, "Eh, kasama ka ba? Did you have any companions?" And I said, "Yeah, I just got left behind by them." Without any malice, he said, "Kasi maraming nababike nap dito eh. You get held up and your bike stolen out from under you." And I said, "Oh, but this bike is really cheap," because it was still my starter bike. It wasn't my Sipo, it wasn't my carbon bike. And he said, "Kaya lang kasi, hindi naman nila pinapansin kung mahal o mura yung bike, basta kinukuha lang nila. They don't really care if your bike is expensive or cheap. They just take it." And I say, "Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for telling me. Thanks for letting me know." And he wished me well, and he went on his way, and I ended up back at the DPWH, and I was shook to my core that that might have happened to me. I was a solo female, technically a solo female, riding by herself on these roads, and there were bike thieves on them. And then, of course, maybe a few months down the line, somebody I know was mugged on those same roads. And it was a guy who got mugged. So that's the reason why I never ride east anymore. Because number one, I don't really have a group of people to ride with who will stay with me or who will keep the group together. And number two is, yeah, I just don't feel safe as a woman on the roads. Now, there are some female cyclists who ride no problem. They have the confidence, and all kudos to them. I'm just not a huge risk taker, and I prefer my cycling with as little complication as possible. And that's the reason why I ride in New Valley, because it's relatively safer because the speeds are lower and the people there are used to sharing the roads with bikes and runners. And also because it is a relatively enclosed system. Not so much anymore because the expressways have opened, but still, it's pretty much all managed by the developer of the place, which is Ayala. And there are security outposts every so often. So if you ever get into a spot of trouble, there's always somebody who's going to come around on patrol and see how you're doing, etc. It's also well populated by other people who are training, so you'll always find somebody who will be willing to lend you a hand if you get into a spot of trouble. All this is to say that when we are introducing people to cycling, or when we are bringing them into our world of cycling, we want to make sure that we leave these beginners or more inexperienced cyclists with a feeling of success, like they can handle the situations that they can get into. And one of the ways we can do that is by making sure that the difficulty of the ride isn't beyond what they can handle. And sure, you can throw people in the deep end and sometimes they will handle that. But sometimes it's just enough to make them pause, wait. Do I really want to be with these people who have put me, napunta ako sa alanganin, in other words? At least for me, I kept cycling because I like the sport of triathlon. I just had to deal with it in a different way. I had to find a location where I could cycle safely, and that's good. But if it were some other person, they might have quit the sport. Miss me with those Budol rides. Please, guys, set the expectations. Make sure that everybody's well taken care of if you're taking people on a group ride. If you have different paces, split people up into pace groups. Make sure that they have buddies. Please keep safe on the roads. And yeah, don't put inexperienced cyclists in situations that are dangerous for them. Might not be dangerous to you because you're well experienced and you can handle your bike, but for inexperienced cyclists who might not have road sense yet, yeah. Anyway, guys, that is story time for this week. Hopefully, the next story time I can tell you about other things, not hair racing things. If you like this, if you were entertained by this, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!